Welcome to another episode of our video series of the mechanics of human cognition.
Hello. It's great to be here.
How are you doing today? Ready to unpack this mountain of material we have in front of us?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And yes, it's quite a stack. It all seems to circle back to one massive question that we got from so many sources.
Yeah.
Is everything fundamentally class-based?
That question, I mean, it feels huge. It's part philosophy, part sociology. It really forces you to look past the obvious things like income and start asking where societal structures end and, where our own free will begins.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, I think. We need to go through this material and really establish how class operates. Not just that it exists, but what the mechanism is. It's not just economic. It's cultural. It's even cognitive.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. When we say class today, we're not just talking about how much is in your bank account. The sources seem to be pushing for a much more complex definition.
They are. Think of it less as a simple ladder and more like layers of an operating system you're born with. It's built on knowledge, on power, on a sense of control, and this idea of mastery over a certain domain.
So it's not a rigid system like a caste system.
Well, exactly. In a rigid caste system, the layers are visible, they're permanent, and everyone knows where they stand. In modern capitalist systems, the layers are designed to be invisible. We're told they're permeable, that anyone can move up.
But the sources argue that's not quite the reality.
The reality is far more complex. The invisibility is what makes it so powerful.
And the example that kept coming up in the material was academia. It's supposed to be the ultimate meritocracy, right? The smartest person wins.
Supposedly. But entry into that world, I mean, it's so heavily guarded by tradition. For someone who is a first-generation academic, the amount of effort required it's almost superhuman.
Why is that? Is it just about studying harder?
It's so much more than that. You're not just learning a subject. You're trying to fundamentally change your own assumptions, your way of thinking, just to fit into this institutional mold.
Whereas if your parents were professors,
then you've been breathing that air your whole life. You've had access to the language, the social norms, the unspoken rules since you were a child.
So this is where that idea of cultural preparation comes in. Class doesn't just give you money, it gives you a kind of fluency.
Fluency is the perfect word. It's earlier access, a higher starting capacity, and this is the crucial part, a greater ability for deep understanding, what the sources call IDRAC.
IDRAC, let's unpack that. It's not just being smart, is it?
No, it's not just raw intelligence. It's the capacity to process complexity, to absorb nuanced information, and actually adapt your internal model of the world. If you grew up at a dinner table where, say, global macroeconomics was a normal topic of conversation,
your IDRAC for that kind of complexity is already developed.
Precisely. Success in that field then becomes significantly easier. It's not magic, it's just preparation.
Which brings us right to the numbers, to the statistical reality. The sources are pretty blunt that wealth itself, serve it, is intensely class-based.
It's a foundational statistical fact.
Well,
the probability of a child from a wealthy background learning to handle large-scale capital, like millions or billions, is just astronomically higher.
Because the skill set is so different. Managing a minimum wage budget versus managing a portfolio are just different universes of thought.
They are entirely different cognitive skills. The wealthy environment is in itself an education in scale and leverage and control. You just can't get that education anywhere else.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
We are constantly flooded with stories of the unicorns, the zero to hero narratives, the story of early Amazon, the college dropouts who become billionaires.
The exceptions.
Exactly. If our whole society believes in that possibility, doesn't that pervasive myth of classlessness start to influence reality? Doesn't it change how people behave?
That's a very important distinction. The myth is essential. It keeps the system stable, it provides the motivation, and allows for those necessary few statistical anomalies to rise up and be celebrated.
So we see them and think, that could be me.
Yes, but we can't mistake those inspiring anomalies for the rule. Class is, at its core, about the statistical average. And for the vast majority, the game is structurally weighted from the start.
Let's shift a bit then to how these conflicts actually play out. Historically, in a lot of systems, you see one class just sort of displacing another. But today, it's not so simple.
No, it's rarely a straightforward factory owner versus laborer conflict anymore. The conflicts are almost always disguised. They're misdiagnosed in public.
How so?
Well, take the example of clashes that are framed as being between religious and secular groups, On the surface, the argument is about faith, about morality, about lifestyle.
But this raises a huge question, doesn't it? When people are arguing so passionately about God or the lack of God, are they really arguing about theology?
Or are they arguing about whose version of society, whose rules, whose entire narrative gets to control the system?
It's almost always the latter.
It is. They're fighting to hold and dictate this system's story. The real prize in modern class conflict is control of the public discourse, the education system, the media, the courts. It's a battle for legitimacy.
And the sources point to some really specific historical examples of this. In certain post-Republic developments, you see these very distinct classes emerge around controlling that narrative.
Absolutely. You had what they call the Kensoilu, the urban bourgeois class, the elites and bureaucrats. Their power didn't come from owning factories. It came from controlling institutions and information.
And then you had other stranger classes, like the children of these early idealistic educators who were dedicated to modernization. That's a class structure built on an idea, not just capital.
A class built on idealism, yes, a very distinct group. But today, the sources suggest that the more traditional classes, like the peasant or Koilu class, have almost vanished.
Which implies that modern stratification, modern class, is almost entirely about power and capital. The old factors of labor are fading away.
It seems to be resting more and more on control over abstract systems, not necessarily the physical means of production in that classic sense.
This is fascinating, and it brings us to a really personal, really thorny issue, the phenomenon of class jumping.
Ah, yes.
Why is it that when someone actually succeeds and moves up, a process we say we celebrate, it so often leads to this deep internal conflict, or even contempt from others?
This is where the Lamakun lover who aspires to yacht travel model from the sources is just so perfect.
Explain that. It's a great image.
The individual works hard, makes money, and acquires the external markers of the new class. They buy the yacht, they learn which wine to order, they wear the right clothes. But something is off.
It's like they've bought the new car, but they haven't learned how to drive it properly.
Or they haven't changed the engine. Our culture today is obsessed with identity. Your diploma, your job title, where you live, what university you went to. These are all, as the source says, matbu. They're printed, external things. They're just the packaging.
But true advancement isn't about the packaging.
True. Sustainable advancement is about updating your core personality. It's about developing new skills, broadening your worldview, and crucially, expanding that foundational IDRAC we talked about.
So the conflict happens when someone tries to just swap out the external identity, change their drink order from beer to wine, let's say, but they haven't done the internal work.
Exactly. Their internal system, their inner code, is still running the old software. They are, in a sense, acting out a part without ever becoming the character.
And people can sense that.
People can absolutely sense that incongruence. It generates that contempt from the established class because they see it as a kind of fraud. But more importantly, it creates a profound internal conflict for the individual. The new environment feels wrong to them because they haven't had the necessary, call it a BIOS update, to feel at ease in that new space.
A BIOS update. That's a powerful analogy. Okay, so if we zoom all the way out, if this internal change is so hard and people default to just changing the outside, is it because this drive for hierarchy is just wired into us? Is stratification unavoidable?
Now we're getting to the deepest layer of the material, and the answer seems to be yes. At its core, the search for power and the creation of social hierarchy are unavoidable biological realities.
We're not just talking about humans.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You see it across the animal kingdom. The pack dynamics of wolves, the hierarchies formed by lobsters and shrimp. It's everywhere.
But how does that biology translate into something as complex as, say, corporate politics or academic debate?
The drive itself seems to be heavily correlated with very basic biological mechanisms, specifically with hormones, things like your baseline testosterone levels.
Really? How so?
Well, historically, in any given group, the individual with the biologically reinforced dominance drive is more likely to take risks, to feel comfortable asserting their view, and to instinctively command a room.
So even in a quiet intellectual setting, that biological pressure is still there under the surface.
It's always there. The person with that higher drive isn't just seeking power consciously. Their body and brain are primed to take the steps necessary to dominate that environment. I mean, even I feel it. If I'm in a conversation and someone else is totally dominating this space, there's a primal part of me that feels uncomfortable. It's an instinct.
So that biological instinct is the bedrock. And then all the complex social, cultural, and economic factors are built on top of that.
That's the argument, yes.
Yes.
The primal drive for a high position in the hierarchy is the rock upon which everything else is built.
Wow. Okay, so if that alpha dynamic is so strong, it almost sounds like fate. It sounds like most people are just stuck in their statistical slot.
And this is the most important part. This is the turn. That's where the human exemption comes in.
The human exemption.
Yes. While these biological and statistical forces are incredibly powerful, humans possess a unique potential, the sources even describe it as godly, to consciously override our own programming.
We can rewrite the code.
We can shatter the limitations of our inherited shell and literally recreate ourselves from the inside out. It's not easy. It takes tremendous conscious effort, but it is possible.
So class is the starting point, but it's not a destination.
Exactly. Many things are class-based, but class is not destiny for the individual who is willing to do that deep internal work.
Which I think brings us to the most practical, the most important takeaway for anyone listening. If you feel stuck, if you feel unhappy with your class position, the path forward isn't just about getting a new job title or moving to a new neighborhood.
No. The key is to change your inside. Change your personality, expand your comprehension, work on that capacity for IDRAC. You have to intentionally seek out complexity, challenge your own worldview, and perform that BIOS update on yourself. That is the only path to true, sustainable advancement. Anything else is just changing the packaging.
That distinction, developing your personality versus just collecting identity markers, that feels like the core lesson here. Class gives you your starting statistics, but the depth of your internal change determines where you actually finish the race.
Well said. And perhaps a final thought for you, the listener, to build on that. Think about that biological foundation we discussed. The next time you walk into a meeting, or even just a social gathering, take a moment. Pay attention to how subtle shifts in your physical state, your posture, how tired you are, even just your breathing, might be influencing that internal dominance drive.
And how that might be affecting your interactions.
Exactly. Just observe how a tiny biological shift can change your willingness to speak up, to take up space, to assert your ideas, even without any conscious thought. It's a small way to see just how deeply our biology is woven into the hierarchies we navigate every single day.
Thank you for joining us as we explored these foundational concepts of class, personality, and the biological drivers of hierarchy. We appreciate you spending this time with us.